Please, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my very good friend, and I've known him for plenty of years, Mr. Dave I.
Hey, everybody. Give it up for Monty for bringing you all together tonight. So I am one of Chicago's only professional foragers. I do this for a living now as a stand-up comedian for 15 years. I still am. It's on the back burner right now. Just focusing on picking vegetables and fruit and stuff, because typically vegetables and fruit aren't 22-year-old douchebags who think they know everything, like most of the comedians that I was working with. So it's a much more relaxing profession to be in, being out in the woods, being with my friends, picking vegetables and fruit all day. And people get really weirded out by it. People get really weirded out by the concept of foraging. People are like, I don't know where that's been. Like, and you know where the fucking apple you got at Jewel's been? Do you know where that even, do you even know what country that came from? I pick an apple off a tree and hand it to somebody like, I don't know how a bird might have shat on that. Like, 14 migrant farm workers might have shat on the apple that you just got from the grocery store that was shipped here from Honduras and then brought to some factory farm where people touched it with their unwashed hands because they have no bathrooms or plumbing. And then you gave that to your kid to eat. So, that's an apple off a tree. You see it growing right there, dick. So I got into foraging because I've always loved nature since I was a kid. I grew up in Skokie, actually, and I lived near a nature center. And I would go to the nature center all the time. They had a pond there, and I'd catch baby turtles and frogs, and I'd bring them home and piss off my parents. And eventually, I started to, when I went out in the woods looking for reptiles and stuff, I started to notice mushrooms, and I started to find out what those were. And then this all kind of came together a few years ago, where my love of nature and my love of cooking came together, and I started to forage more as a hobby. And then I realized, once you go out mushroom hunting, like maybe 5 or 6 times and find 70, 80 pounds of mushrooms, there comes a certain point where, like, I can't eat any more goddamn mushrooms. So what am I going to do with all these mushrooms I'm finding? I like going out and finding them, but I can't eat this many of them. And so I started taking them to some restaurants. And the restaurants really liked the mushrooms, and they're like, hey, as long as you're getting mushrooms, can you get us some ramps? I'm like, I don't know what ramps are. Looked it up. Found out what ramps were. Now I find them ramps. And then it just went on and on and on. And I would find and identify more things. So now I've been doing this for almost 4 years professionally, and I had been doing it as a hobby since I was a kid, but now I can identify over 700 wild mushrooms and edible plants and fruits and berries and stuff, and me and my friend now in the wintertime, you can't really go foraging around here. There's not too much stuff to find, so we go all the way to Florida, and we go to old abandoned fruit orchards that land developers bought in the early 2000s, and that's not really going very well for them. So there's a lot of fruit going crazy down there. So we load up a van and bring it up here, and the restaurants would buy that from us. So that's what we have out there for you if you want to grab some on your way out. I want to tell you a story about how basically all my hobbies I've had for my entire life have always gotten me in trouble. When I was going out looking for reptiles and stuff, it kind of requires you to go to abandoned places that mostly meth heads hang out at to look under garbage for snakes and things, and that would get me stopped by the cops a lot. But foraging has actually gotten me arrested, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I got arrested for picking mushrooms in one of the Cook County Forest Preserves. So it was 2 years ago, and I was on a mushroom hunter's message board, and I met another guy on that message board who's like, hey, we should go out mushroom hunting sometime. And I'm like, sure. Some random stranger I met on the internet on a mushroom hunting board. Yeah, I'll meet you in the middle of the woods. Why not? Let's see what happens. Right? So he brings me to this spot in Bussy Woods, and there's chanterelles all over the place. All over the place. More chanterelles than I've ever seen around here locally. And so we start picking them, and he's like, you got to be careful because, the Forest Preserve cops come by and they don't really like people doing this stuff. And I was thinking, like, I'm pretty sure, like, most places, most state parks and stuff, mushroom hunting is not a big deal. They don't mind you mushroom hunting because what people don't understand is a mushroom growing out of the ground, that's only the fruit of the organism you're seeing. And picking a mushroom off the ground is like picking an apple apple off a tree. All the branches and root system and everything else that makes a mushroom is underneath the ground, underneath the tree that it's growing on or whatever. So picking the mushroom itself is not actually harming the organism. You're just picking the fruit of that organism. So I was under the impression that it's perfectly all right to pick mushrooms. I've seen people do it all the time. My whole life I always see, like, you know, old European people in the woods picking mushrooms, and nobody bothers them. Literally 5 minutes into picking these mushrooms, a forest preserve cop pulls up, and he comes running out in the woods. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? And he looks in my bag, and he sees chanterelles. He goes, are these flowers? I'm like, you're not a very good forest preserve cop. You don't know much about the forest, do you? And I'm not trying to make fun of the guy, but he was obviously hired because of somebody. There was some sort of special program for slow people or something like that. Maybe he had an uncle that got him in. I don't know. But the guy literally he was like, yeah, I don't think you can pick these. And and he brings out the statute book. He has me and my friend standing there, and he's complaining because we're picking mushrooms in the woods, and the whole time he's fucking slapping mosquitoes off of them. I'm like, I'm pretty sure, like, you know, we're picking mushrooms, but you're killing animals in the forest preserve. So he reads the statute to me, and the statute says that nobody can take any plants, any leaves, any sticks, any branches, any rocks, any leaves, any dirt, anything from the forest preserve, except it does not mention fungus or mushrooms. And I specifically pointed this out to him. I said, sir, you'll notice in that statute you just read us, the law is pretty clear, that mushrooms and fungus are not included in that statute. And he said, well, they'll probably just be considered plants. You're not a very good forest preserve cop, are you? I'm pretty sure mushrooms haven't been considered plants since like 1890. So I want to reevaluate your guidebook or whatever. So he writes us a ticket. He writes us each a $300 ticket. Yeah, so that was fun. So I call my friend, who's an attorney, actually, and he's one of my snake hunting friends that I met on another message board. I'm a fucking weird dude. And so we go to court, and I tell him, you know, he finds the statute. He's like, yeah, the statute says nothing about fungus or mushrooms and stuff. So I have to pay my lawyer $300, and this is a friend of mine, to go to court with me and basically say, yeah, the statute says nothing about fungus or mushrooms. And the judge had to be like, you're right. It doesn't. You're free to go. No charges. Go on. So I'm like, cool. I can go in the woods and pick mushrooms and nobody can bother me anymore because I have actual physical evidence from a judge that is not included in the statute. Fast forward to a couple of months later, I'm in the woods again picking mushrooms, and what do you know? There's old Dudley. Like, hey there, what are you doing in the woods again picking mushrooms? And his meathead, like, ex-military, or maybe he just never got into the military and had to be a forest preserve cop instead guy, comes up and he's all, you know, muscle-bound, like, shaved fucking head and stuff, and he's just like, what the fuck you doing here again, man? We told you to stay out of our woods picking these mushrooms. And I'm like, first of all, it's the taxpayers' woods. We pay your salary, so eat a dick. He's getting in my face and like screaming at me, like, you can't be doing this. And I'm like, in a court of law, the judge said that these mushrooms are not included in the statute, and therefore they are legal to pick, and I can do whatever I want with them. And he brings me over to my car. And he goes, well, this is, you know, and he's like rifling through my car without permission, which I'm pretty sure there's a law against that. And he's like, you have anything in here you shouldn't have? I'm like, well, other than the mushrooms that you think I shouldn't have, no. Maybe this machete that I found in the woods along the railroad tracks a few years ago. Like I said, I'm a weird fucking dude. South side of Chicago looking for snakes, you find a machete stabbed into a telephone pole, you fucking take that shit. That's cool. Where else are you gonna get a machete from, right? So I had this machete in the back seat of my car. I'm like, that's about the only thing I shouldn't have. And he immediately goes, that's a deadly weapon. You were carrying a deadly weapon. So the fucking guy gives me a ticket. He gives me a ticket and arrests me for having an unlawful use of a weapon, he called it. He wrote me a ticket for picking the mushrooms as well. And then they arrested me. They took me to Cook County. They towed my car. And so the next day, I had to bail myself out of jail, and then I had to go and get my car the next morning. That cost me $250. And then I had to get my lawyer again, $1,000 this time, to go to court with me, to once again point out to the judge that that statute says nothing about fungus or mushrooms. And my lawyer was saying to me, he's like, you know, this unlawful use of a weapon charge, we can get that thrown out because you weren't using the weapon, it was in your car, and you weren't actually. I'm like, how about we just say you had no probable cause to stop me in the first place because picking mushrooms ain't fucking illegal? And he's like, that's good, we'll use that. I'm like, give me my $1,000 back, dick. And wouldn't you know it, that fucking worked, and I got off. So go pick mushrooms in the woods. Nobody can do shit. I'm Dave Ott, everybody. Thanks a lot.